Good evening, everyone. Um, Thank you for coming out. Um, we, Naomi and I were just chatting it up about, um, of all things, chess. And it's been a very instrumental, the game of chess has been very instrumental in terms of my development. And we were just talking about how our respective loved ones learned the game from us. And in my case, I taught my son how to play it. He's now 34. Um, since he turned 16, I've never won a game with him since. So, and I taught him at the age of 3. So, um, as a competitor, I feel a certain way about losing to my own son, and we shared that. So, my name is Hashim Davis. I am the Assistant Dean at the Office of African American Affairs at the University of Virginia, as well as the Director of the Luther Porter Jackson Black Culture Center. And it is my extreme honor and pleasure to be here with our guest, Ms. Naomi.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so very much for being so kind. Thank you, particularly Glenn, for inviting me here. I am originally from Martinsville in Henry County, which is Appalachia. And because I have no prodigy, uh, I could not allow myself to leave this world without telling the tales of my family. My family came to Virginia in 1749. He was an African slave bought named Isom, 1749, by Colonel Waller and taken to Henry County. And so I wrote a book because when you're very poor, sitting around the potbelly stove, you listen to the ancestors. We didn't have electricity until I was 8 years old. So my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother were the guardians of our history. And they sat beside that stove and they told us who we were. And I refused to die and not have these stories told. And so I will get into it. My name is Naomi Hodge Muse. I have a BS degree from Virginia Union University, biology, minor in chemistry. I have an MBA from University of North Carolina, Greensboro. I worked in corporate America for 32 years. I retired from Miller Brewing Company. And by the grace of God and God alone, I was able to be the first in my family, the very first in my family to go to college. And being from Appalachia, I want you to know I talk like this normally. And when we got on the school bus, we had a school teacher, his name was Mr. Hilton. And we got on the bus and Mr. Hilton said, we said morning. And Mr. Hilton, a very proper man and also a UVA graduate, he's got a doctorate from UVA. And he was supplementing his teacher's salary by driving the bus. And Mr. Hilton said, one should not be able to tell one's geographical location merely by one's diction. I said, what you saw, you say that there. So the Tales of Koehler Hollow, my author is Dr. Christopher Brooks. He is a PhD cultural anthropologist from Virginia Commonwealth University. So not only did I want to write a book, I had no desire to do vanity press. To me, that's just a Xerox machine. You know, I'm not. I was going to have an author. I was going to be a published author. And so I say this to young people and to anybody in here, if you want something, speak it and get to it. Do not take this as like this is a dream, this can't happen. I'm not a writer. But Dr. Christopher Brooks has written 14 books and 2 New York Times bestsellers. And because he's written 2 New York Times bestsellers, we were able to get a publishing company. And this book became the bestseller on Amazon, the top 100 seller on Amazon within 2 months of it being published. So kudos off to Dr. Christopher Brooks, and you see him there. And this is the cover of my book. What is Appalachia? A lot of people do not know what Appalachia is. And this is how far Appalachia runs, from New York all the way down into Mississippi. Henry County is the easternmost, one of the easternmost counties of Appalachia. Most people think this is Appalachia. They remember I said my folks go back in Henry County to 1749. But this is what is shown to be Appalachia. The Beverly Hillbillies. I love the Beverly Hillbillies. Oh, I love Granny. Darling, darling. No, that was Come a Running, Jed. Green. Do you remember this one? Petticoat Junction. All people that are over 60 remember Petticoat Junction. And Green Acres. A funny tale that involves one of the people in the audience. His sister and I went to college together, and Darlene did not know how desperately poor my people were, because that's not something that poor folks see. That's the difference between urban and rural. In urban, it's like, I'm from the hood, I'm from the hood. When you eat muskrat, possum, and squirrel, you don't go out and tell people, I eat muskrat, possum, and squirrel. You won't, I don't, so there's a whole different culture. And Black Appalachia is not talked about. It appears to be Hollywood has decided that only urban people have a Black experience. And that's not so, because we, the bulk of us, stayed and made a living and raised our families. And so we enjoyed our life. And so this downtrodden, beat up, broke up, I'm totally afraid to walk outside, massa, that's Hollywood. That's not real. We live with dignity. We live with self-reliance. We took care of our children. 70% of Black households in Appalachia had husbands and wives. This single family mothers living by themselves, even though my father jumped up and left and went up north. But this is, and the freedom movement, the civil rights movement came what? Out of the South. So this is the cover of my book. The matriarch of my family is Amy Finney. That is a tintype taken about 1870. And she was 6'1", plowed with 2 mules. And this very handsome man underneath, that is my Uncle Sonny Boy. His name is James Alfred Finney. But he was so sweet and loving that they called him Sonny. And if you ever met him, he was as sunny as he was a sweet man. That's my mother, and that's me at Mabry's Mill. Anybody been to Mabry's Mill on the Blue Ridge Parkway? Please ride the Blue Ridge Parkway. And that's us. My brother, the only boy there, that's me, the giant one. And my sister that's my cousin Sharon, my sister that got killed, Loretta, and my baby sister, Christine. Amy Finney is the start of this talk. Amy Finney, so how do I learn about Amy Finney? Once again, urban people don't have those great grandparents that can tell you who you are, but we had an extended family. So there was 3 generations in one house. There were 3 generations in one house. There was my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother, my grandmother and my grandfather, and my mom, and us. So we had all of these old people. There was no such thing as a babysitter. And you were always being supervised because there were people there. But we were also very bad. So Grandma Amy was born in 1850. And when she was 11 years old, she poisoned the old master with black widow spiders. So how did I find out about this? It's in the book. I'm not going to cover everything in the book. I'm just going to give you some overviews. I loved black widow spiders, and I was about 9 years old, and we had a wood pile. We did not have plumbing. When I got back out of Virginia Union University, I graduated on Sunday at Virginia Union. I rode the Greyhound bus back home, and went to work at DuPont on Monday. I graduated on Sunday from Virginia Union, went to work at DuPont on Monday. And I took an apartment because, you get used to plumbing. So, so I had to get some money together to put the plumbing back on the farm. So after I got the money together, but nevertheless, that's how desperately poor we were. So there we had a wood pile, and in every wood pile, there's black widow spiders. So as a little girl, I thought they were beautiful. And so I had a collection of black widow spiders. But you have to be very meticulous about capturing them, because, they are poisonous, but they're beautiful. And so why not? So I caught any insect, biology major. I caught everything from honeybees to hummingbirds. Anybody ever caught a hummingbird? I have. Because my grandfather said, you can't catch a hummingbird. It's no way. It's not possible. So I watched them. And a hummingbird has to back up before he goes forward. So he backed right into my jar. And I took him, so I took him to my grandfather and said, I thought you said I couldn't, I caught one. You let it go. But nevertheless, getting back to the black widow spiders, I digress. So I'm being very focused. And my grandmother, who was a domestic, had gotten off, and I didn't know it. And she walked up behind me, and she about lost it. Granny never, ever fussed at me. I was the perfect one. My granny never fussed at me. Only thing my granny would say to me is, Granny's baby black and sweet, just like candy that you eat. She would say that to me every day, every day. But now she's fussing at me, and she's enraged. Scared me half to death. So later on, after I calmed down and grandmother, I said, Granny, why did you get so angry with me? And she says, well, I don't want you to be like Amy. Amy poisoned, Appalachian talk. She poisoned old master with black widow spiders. And so she told me the tale. And so basically, one of the words used quite frequently in the South was miscegenation. If you don't know it, Google it. But miscegenation was rampant on the plantation. And men availed themselves to any woman they wanted. And in Henry County, the Harrison plantation was a breeding plantation dedicated to producing mulattoes to sell down south, to sell further down. So, and we'll get into that later on in the book. But nevertheless, the old Mitchell man that owned my family had his way in the slave quarters. And so his wife did not like it. And he had one particular little son that was beautiful with curly hair. And his wife decided, and that was Grandma Amy's brother, that she would hold him in her lap and feed him grapes, basically to taunt the old master. And maybe she liked him, but who knows? But she kept him in her lap, and it infuriated the old Mitchell man. And he told her, he says, one of these days, that little nigger is going to be eating my grapes, and you done taught him how, and I'm going to hurt him. Well, as luck may be, he rode up on his horse, and there's little Ben pulling grapes down, stuffing them in his mouth. He dismounted his horse, grabbed the boy up. The boy's about 3 or 4 years old, took a board from the wood pile and hit him broke his leg. You could hear the break. Mrs. ran down. He only got to hit him once. He was crippled for the rest of his life. Grandma Amy was 11. That was her baby brother. She loved him, but she was responsible for the wood, for the cooking, and she was responsible for setting the table. And so she took the black widow spiders and dried them in the windowsill and grind them into his pepper. And so he loved black pepper, and it just put the pepper on everything. It took several weeks for it to take effect. But when it did, his head swole. And I had another another UVA graduate, Dr. Boaz, told me, well, that would not have poisoned him. That's impossible. I said, why don't you think about denture? Think about teeth back then and how many people had cavities. Oh, yes. Well, that fits with what happened. His head swelled. It became huge. And they came in and they let blood and he died. I found it. He died in Reidsville, North Carolina, at the hospital. And so when they had the funeral, Grandma Amy's only 11. She got scared that they'd figure out that she killed him. And so she pretended to faint. Oh, Lord, Master dead. She just passed out acting. But that was one of the tales. And so these are the kind of tales. George Finney talked about the patty rollers and how the slaves on Sunday had their one day off. If they sold your wife, your significant other, to another plantation, they would allow you to visit. And this one particular man decided that he was tired of this man begging to go to the other plantation, and you had to take a note with you. And he wrote on the note, he says, "Niggers steal and niggers beg. You catch this nigger, hit him in the head." Instead of what we normally write is he has right passage to go to one plantation or another. So that's how I know about patty rollers. Grandma Amy was a midwife. Like I said, she stood 6'1". She plowed with 2 mules. She was a great horseman, and she plowed all day for a man. Now, most people don't understand the workday prior to 1939 was sun up to sundown. It was called you work from Can-See to Can't-See. That was the workday, from Can-See to Can't-See. So can you imagine? She plowed all day, and the man came and handed her a quarter. And she plowed with 2 mules. She says, "I plows like a man. I gwine be paid like a man. Now you turn loose my little bit from yours." He said, "But Amy, you know you was a woman." And she said she couldn't help herself. She jiked him up and she pulled him up by the front of his shirt. She said, "You turn loose my little bit from yours." And he paid her. He said, then as she's taking her mules and going on home, taking her horses and going on home, she got a little bit afraid that they were going to send somebody after her because she did lay hands on him. But then she came to her. What man would tell another man that a woman jiked him up? So she went on. She delivered babies during the influenza epidemic, and she had a cure for childbed fever. And it was roots and herbs that she had put together. Childbed fever is nothing but it was not sanitary when you had a baby, and so people would get infections, and these infections would oftentimes kill women. And she had a cure that she would give, and so they had a doctor in Fieldale that Fieldcrest had brought in, and he wouldn't treat black people. He said that he didn't know nothing about colored people, and this little boy had fallen and hurt himself pretty bad, and he refused to help. So the influenza epidemic had subsided, and so this doctor decided that he was going to come up to Hollow and get Grandma Amy's remedy for childbed fever. So he pulls up with his surrey, and he says, "Is you Amy Finney?" She smoked a corncob pipe. She said, "Al." Said, "I hear you got a cure for that there childbed fever. I come here to get it." She says, "Can you read?" He said, "Of course I can." "And cipher too?" Cipher means mathematics. "Of course I can." She said, "Huh, figure it out." Took another drag off of her pipe. She didn't give it to him. My mother always said that we were too black to be hillbillies, but we were definitely hillbillies. There's a breed of crazy that it is. There's a breed of crazy in the mountains, and we have our share. If you read my book, you will see that we have a plethora of tales of people that are just. This is the woods. We live almost a mile off the road. We have no neighbors. We were the only black kids in Koehler. And the only other black folks in Koehler was Mr. Frank and Miss Alice Goins. And that's Koehler Hollow. That's the house. And These small boards you see there, those are chestnut. The chestnut blight destroyed the chestnut trees across the United States. This house was built in 1924 by George Washington Finney, Amy Finney's son. When I came back from college, you saw I told you I got used to plumbing. I put a bathroom, I put a well in, the well's right there, and I put 2 bedrooms here and another bedroom there. Anybody ever see The Jerk with Steve Martin? I'm the black version of The Jerk. Remember remember the house, The Jerk? You remember The Jerk? It was a long brown, and he went back and he just made the house bigger. That's all I did. I went back and I stayed there and farmed, raised goats and pigs and chickens and turkeys until I got married in 1989. I stayed in the woods, and it was magical. That is George Washington Finney, to me, the standard bearer of what a man is. He paid the poll tax. He paid the poll tax. You hear me? He put on his suit and he put on his hat and he took his walking stick and he walked to town and paid the poll tax. When the Depression came and the Bassett industry told all black folks that you're now not going to give you $1 a day, we're going to give you 50 cents. George Finney says, a man don't work for less than $1 a day. And he walked off and he farmed and did carpentry during the Great Depression. George Finney always said, now Rosa, that's my great-grandmother, his wife, make sure you make enough bread, because somebody comes up here and they want a little something to eat. I want you to make sure we got something. Now, as poor as we were, George Finney says, man or woman won't come to my house that I can't offer you a piece of bread. How far has our people come that you can go to somebody's house and they won't even offer you a glass of water? Lord have mercy. This man said, and the hobos would come up the holler and ask Papa, well, Uncle George, because they couldn't call a black man Mister. They said, well, Uncle George, can I cut some wood for you so get a little something to eat? Papa said, I don't let no man use my axe. Rosa, go in there and make that man some jelly biscuits and send him on his way. And that's Mama Rosie, a Christian woman, ever walked on 2 feet. She was so kind and so loving that I really defies words for how loving Rosa Waller Finney was. And that's my grandma Dolly. This is the woman that says, Granny's baby, black and sweet, just like candy that you eat. She had a photographic memory, but yet she couldn't go any further than the 6th grade. She could recite Tennyson. She could recite Shakespeare. She was brilliant. She was kind. And this is my Uncle Ramey and Aunt Alice. Now, everybody tease people about Appalachia, about us marrying each other. They tease white folks. We ain't tease black folks too, because we marry each other. My mother's the first person not to marry a relative. Ain't nothing wrong with me. My mother's the first one. So why do you marry your relatives? If you ain't got a car and you ain't got a house, who you gonna coat? Ain't nothing wrong with you marrying your folks. So now, they were third cousins. And this is Uncle Ramey, and this is Alice Finney. And so in the book, Alice Finney is an absolute character. And she's about 40 in this picture. So can you imagine her at 23? Okay? And she was bosom, and she was made up from the floor up. And so Uncle Ramey is a barber and a businessman, and he tells Aunt Alice, now, don't you sell no liquor to nobody that you don't know, because old Tightrope is around. Tightrope is the alcohol person. Any rate, so Aunt Alice, being the dutiful, obedient wife that she was, took the liquor and put it in a bucket and put it under the counter. And this man came in that mother is 10. So mother was born in 27. So this is 1937. Okay, so let's get the numbers right. So this is 1937. Aunt Alice puts the liquor under the counter, puts a dipper in it, this man comes in, asks Aunt Alice for a shot of whiskey, and he's good looking. And Aunt Alice goes to the bucket, sloshes him a drink, and slides it down the counter. And he puts the money on the counter and leaves. And an hour or two later, here comes the sheriff. They arrest Aunt Alice. So now Aunt Alice is in jail. So now my grandma is 23, 24. Aunt Alice 23. So the jail in Henry County was on the side of the street, and the bars, and you could put things through the bars to the people in the jail. And so grandmother, being the good Christian woman that she was, put through the bars a pint of bootleg liquor. So now Aunt Alice is about nipped, and she's very fair, and her hair is red, okay? And she's made up from the floor up. So she goes to court, the same courthouse that the Martinsville Seven was convicted and sentenced to death. Same courthouse. McBride was the judge, and Aunt Alice is filling her little bootleg, and he says to Aunt Alice, "Gail, ain't this the second or third time you've been in here for selling liquor?" "Man, Aunt Alice, man, how dare you call me? I am Miss Finney." Aunt Alice stood up and put her hands on her hip and let her backbone slip. She says, "If I can't pull it, I'll just get behind it and push it." The judge hit the gavel so hard he broke off his face. I thought, see, this flies in the face of, oh, y'all so beat up, y'all so terrorized, oh, y'all. I'm sorry. That's a narrative that somebody else wrote. We lived our lives, and the majority of the population didn't have a whole lot of, you weren't a subject of conversation nor a subject of fear. It just wasn't real. And this is my Aunt Woodsy. My Aunt Woodsy shot a man twice in the same leg, in the same hole, put the bullets right on top of each other. She was awesome. One day, she and my Uncle Jordan had a shoot-off. Uncle Jordan had a shotgun, double barrel, and she had her gun, and Uncle Jordan said, "I can shoot my shotgun just as fast as you can pull the trigger on your pistol." So they let me do the countdown. And Uncle Jordan had the gun pop down, had the shells in his hand, and when he come up, boom, 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 oh, it was awesome. It was better than anything in Hollywood. Uncle Jordan was so mean that, honest to God, he committed suicide. But you know, that's part of, and that's my mother, and Doretha, and that's the oil painting that I had done of her. She's named after. Remember I told you there was another black family? The lady was a very fair-complected, green-eyed lady, and her claim to fame is that Robert E. Lee was her great-granddaddy. She played the mandolin, and he played the steel guitar. And every Friday night, everybody, and we're only black folks, everybody came up to their house, and they was a flat footing, and she was playing that man, waiting on that Robert E. Lee. Oh my God. And they would be flat footing, and they made homebrew. Anybody ever had homebrew? Homebrew is not beer. Anybody? Y'all too young. Homebrew is delicious, and it's made out of malt, syrup, and raisins and yeast, and it's delicious. And so we would sneak in the back because we weren't supposed to be up there, and we'd suck it out the crock, but it would get so low we couldn't get any. So then I decided, look, let's take the straw on Friday from our milk cartons and put it in our book and take it home. And then we get it in there, we can open it up and we can drink all the homebrew we wanted. My brother and I would be drunk as we could be. I have never been one of those persons that believes that you can you edit out all the bad parts of your life and make yourself saintly. Aren't those people boring? They're not only boring, but they're also liars. And this is my Uncle Sonny Boy. When the Martinsville Seven were found guilty of raping that one white woman, My great-grandfather insisted that he go ahead and get in the military. Get out of here. I don't want you here. Because he was very handsome and very affable. Can you imagine? You would rather your grandson go to Korea than to stay here. That's me. And yes, I cut it on purpose. And I'm wearing this to the box. Get it to the box? Okay, you get it. This is Norfolk and Southern Railroad that runs through. And my sister was killed on that railroad track. That's George Finney, 1890, as a young man. I have to talk about my stepfather, Pork Chop, Buffalo Soldier, World War II, machine gunner. And he was a proud soldier. And he talked about when he came back on the ship, and he had a big buffalo patch on his arm. And the white colonel came down to the bottom of the ship and said, I want you niggers take them patches off. I ain't gonna have you coming back to the United States thinking you're something. And he gave him a patch about the size of a quarter. And Papa refused to take his off. And he ripped it off his shoulder, threw it on the floor. And the water would roll up in his eyes. That's Mama and Papa at Lakeside. I don't know if y'all remember Lakeside. It was in Roanoke. And this man, Dana O. Baldwin, I've got to talk about him. We're talking about miscegenation. One of the stories in the book that I go in great length was I didn't have enough money to go back to Virginia Union one semester. So I took a job in the furniture factory to save enough money to get back. The foreman in the furniture factory, gigantic white fellow that wore khakis, every day threatened to rape me, every day. And I was scared to tell Pork Chop. I was scared to tell Mama because I don't know what Pork Chop was really mean. Any rate, what is miscegenation? Martinsville was known for the amount of very light complected Black people because this was not something that is talked about, but it's just the reality. The reality of it is your only job was, if you were a Black woman, where you were a maid, period. You took care of people's children. And if the husband or the wife wasn't available to the husband and you're in that house, then you're available. And go somewhere else is the same thing. So in my class, the majority, I would say 70% of my class were extremely light complected people. But Dana O. Baldwin started a furniture factory, started a knitting, a pants company, and started hiring Black women to sew pants. This is also the man that filled out my medical to go to Virginia Union. Classism exists in every society. The man that delivered me, Dr. Williams, I'm an asthmatic. I had pneumonia so many times, I failed the 6th grade because I missed 31 days of school. And because of that, my lungs are just tore up. So I won a 4-year full tuition scholarship to Virginia Union. I competed for 7 years. In 7 years, I lost. I started in the 3rd grade, and I lost every year until my junior year. And Mr. Hilton would look at me when I get on the school bus, water in my eyes, and I tell him I didn't win. And he said, well, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. Do better. A winner never quits and a quitter never wins. Do better. And I stayed with it. In my junior year, I won first in the local, first in the district, first in the state. My senior year, I won first in the local, first in the district, first in the state, and a 4-year full tuition scholarship to Virginia Union University. I could have picked any college, but I went to Hampton and everybody was dressed up and I had everything out the Goodwill store on. So I said, I am not going there. I'm tired of being the ragamuffin. And Virginia State, well, the buildings were just square and they weren't pretty. And then Virginia Union's buildings were gorgeous. They were beautiful. And a boy from Fieldale was standing in the student center in a t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. And I said, I can get a t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. I'm going to Virginia Union. So that's how I got to Virginia Union. So I'm talking about classism. So I had to fill out a physical. and Union sent it to me. And Dr. Williams looked at my mother and says, she's too sickly. I gotta call it like I see it. And mother said, the hell you will, and she took it away. How can I be too sickly to go to college and not work in the furniture factory? What a jerk. What an absolute jerk. This man was 92 years old. We went to him. He said, Gail, you think you can make it? I said, Dr. Bowman, I'll die if I don't go to college. I'm going to fill this out. Now, do you get some of them bad teeth pulled? Because you know a toothache is a terrible thing. Mama said, I'll do, I promise. I love that man. That's the bridge he carried me across. It goes back to Amy Finney. And the one word that I will say that sums up this book and my experience in my life of 74 years is gumption. Cowards never succeed. I don't care how many times you get knocked down, get up. I don't care how bad it is, keep trying. I don't care how terrible it is. Don't give up. Keep believing that you can. Keep working at it. I don't care if they tell you you're the dumbest thing in the whole wide world. They can look at you and call you dumb. It happened to me at Miller when I was there. They said, well, what is Virginia Union? People went to Vanderbilt, and they went to Miami of Ohio, and they went to University of Kentucky, and all of these colleges. Well, I've never heard of Virginia Union. And one day, an operator put caustic in a tank. And they had almost got me. They almost had got me. And the operator put caustic in a tank. And we had a professor of physics, Dr. Romanoff, and he had been in a concentration camp, and the ligament in his leg had been torn, and he walked with a profuse limp. He taught physics. A cylindrical vessel with a cone-shaped bottom. So the woman put caustic in it. This is, and it's those 5,000 gallons 5,000 barrels of beer. There's 31 gallons in one barrel. So this thing holds 5,000 gallons of beer. So you know we're scared. This is a whole lot of revenue. So all of the Miami of Ohio and Vanderbilt went to this spigot on the bottom and took their sample to the lab, and the lab showed no caustic. And so now we're having this big meeting, and I'm sitting in there. Well, we've taken 5 samples and the caustic is not there. It's 5 samples. And I said, the caustic's on the top. And they looked at me and they laughed. I left the meeting. I had them open the top of the tank. I got a rope. I got a bucket. I dropped the bucket in the top of the tank. I took it to the lab, and there's the caustic. And then I looked at them and said, now that's Virginia Union University, 1500 North Lombardy. And that was the end of that. So you can also say that perhaps I was more cocky than I should have been, but everybody has character flaws. So, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Full disclosure, I am a Unionite. I received my degrees in history and poli-sci, Virginia Union, so we have that in common as well. So I have a few questions. And we talked earlier, and I mentioned to you that the book was a decent blend in terms of comedic moments, but also with some heavy trauma. And I would encourage those who've not read the book, please go on ahead. You'll find it encouraging. You touched upon this a little bit. And my first question was, how was life like growing in Appalachia, and how different was the African American experience different from those living in urban areas? You touched on it. There's a difference between urban poor and rural poor. I'm a native of Brooklyn, New York. Emphatically can understand what it's like being poor. But there was a relative in the story who ate possum. Now, I'm just going to put this out there. That is the ugliest creature. And I'm a full grown man, but I don't have a problem moving the other way when it's coming. Okay, so um, what was what was the differences like?
Well, there is an animal that I don't think that is in Virginia outside of a mountain lion that we would not eat. We've eaten bear, or we've eaten muskrat, we've eaten groundhog, possum, of course, chicken and squirrel. I hate squirrel. I love rabbit. I hate squirrel. Squirrel's a whole bunch of little sharp bones. You know, if you come home and there's a pot of squirrel and neck bones and spare ribs and it won't nothing, it's like, oh my God. And possum, I got one of the stories of I got a spanking over possum. My Aunt Woodsy brought a possum home because the white folks had caught it in a rabbit hutch and they didn't want it. And so she brought it home and put it down in this box and fed it cornbread and buttermilk. And so I went with her and she said, you know, a possum is magic. And I said, what do you mean? She said, if you tell a possum you're going to kill it, it'll disappear. And so it is ugly. You are 100% right. And I did not want to eat it. So when she went down the hill, I made a U-turn and went back up. I opened up the lid and I said, Mr. Possum, she gonna kill you. She gonna kill you. I put the lid back on. I skipped on about my business. The next morning, my auntie is in the kitchen cussing to beat the bed, mad as the dickens. I walk in like, what's wrong? Somebody let my DMN possum go. And I fell out laughing. I got a spanking behind that possum. But grandmother worked for the Bassett's and she brought home a bottle of manicured cherries. And only had 2 in them, just a little bit of liquid and 2 cherries. I said, what's she gonna do with that? She cooked the possum and stuck the cherry in his mouth like this.
Yeah.
And my brother ate that possum. I ate string beans and cornbread that day. I shied from possum, but we also got tonic. Anybody got? They made a spring tonic. Andy Griffith, you seen that one? Okay. And Mount Airy is only 52 miles from where I live. So the dialect that's spoken on the Andy Griffith show, that is exactly how we spoke in that area. So, and I love Andy Griffith. I go to Mount Airy at least once a quarter just because I want to go there and ride in Barney Fife's car and eat. And I love it. I do, because I'm still a hillbilly. But we got tonic. And they would go in the woods and root vein and sassafras and all the roots that they would pull together, and they'd boil them all day long. And then they let it cool. And then they put a little bootleg liquor in it and they call you. Come on. And if you didn't open your mouth, they'd hold your nose until your mouth opened up and then down the hatch. And you got tonic. And we also got wormed with turpentine and sugar. Google it, and you'll actually see that it will eliminate parasites, and yes, they will. Now, it also will kill your kidneys and kill your liver. But we got wormed, and those are the things that you saw in Beverly Hillbillies that you heard about. The only thing that we didn't have is buzzard eggs. I've never eaten a buzzard egg. Beverly Granny did.
So sorry, I can't. Can't even, can't connect. The Martinsville 7 was an event that you described as, and I quote, truly damnable aspect of the American miscarriage of justice, end quote. Given how due process has featured heavily in the news in the last several months, how does the case of the Martinsville 7 reflect a lack of due process? How did the Southern Jim Crow laws affect lives of your family? And what are your thoughts of then Governor Ralph Northam's pardoning of the Martinsville 7? So I'll start with the first question. How does the case of the Martinsville 7 reflect a lack of due process?
I just got through telling you that miscegenation was the soup of the day, right? This is Henry County, but it's only a one-way street, okay? This lady was a Jehovah's Witness. She actually, my husband was 20, I got married very late in life, and my husband was 23 years older than me. And he was a businessman on Fed Street running a real estate company, an insurance company. She came by his establishment 8 o'clock in the afternoon. He told her, "You've got no business being in the West End this late at night. You need to leave. There's no reason for you, and get out of my office. I don't want you here." But she had a liaison with the very light complected guy that was one of the seven. I don't know what debaucherous act they did. And understand, I'm not saying these boys were not wrong. It was an absolute debauchery. But the problem is they all died. They didn't kill her. They all died. They were all electrocuted. And so it is the hypocrisy of miscegenation and then the gentility and this is a Southern belle that needs to be protected, but I can be raped in the furniture factory in 1970, and it's okay, and this man can laugh about it every day until I pull the knife on him and tell him I'd cut him, and then because he called me, he said, Buckwheat, I got you now. And I flipped that knife out and I said, "Okay, come on, I'm gonna cut your way but loose." Oh, Susie Q. I went from Buckwheat to Susie Q. That's what a coward would do. My grandmother said, "A coward dies 1,000 deaths. A brave man over once. You're gonna kill me. You're gonna kill me where everybody can see it. You're not gonna drag me off in the woods." People, young folks, you got to put that in your head. Don't let somebody scare you so badly, and now they got you in seclusion. You stand up for yourself. It doesn't matter. You're going to get hurt anyway. So be hurt where somebody can help you rather than be hurt when somebody can't. You're a girl. Most likely you can be overpowered. But I digress. But it was a debaucherous act, and it shined a very bad light on Virginia. It shined a very bad light. I'm glad Ralph Northam pardoned them posthumously. I'm glad he did. But it's just a sore. And if you talk to the people, most of them are dead now, they would not talk about it. You could hardly get no one to talk about it because it was ugly, and it was uglier.
There are some notable individual stories about your family. You mentioned Grandma Amy's facing down a white farmer and making a fool of the doctor. Could you highlight some other stories for those who did not read the book? One or two.
Pork Chop, my stepfather, told the man he would pay for his car, he'd pay for his ass, but you're not gonna cuss my daughter not one more time. I didn't mean to hit this man. I was gonna make a left turn going up the holler where we lived, and I forgot mother's bread. And so I took my blinker off and pulled forward, but this man had come around me on it's a 2-lane road, it's not 3 lanes. He come around me, and so I tapped him. He had a yellow truck, and he got out. The truck that looks like a car with the bed. What's that thing called? No, it looks like a car. It's really, there you go, that's exactly right. An El Camino, and it was pretty. And he got out that car and he cursed me. He cursed me and called me all kind of names. And somebody ran up the holler and told Pork Chop. And Pork Chop was over 6 foot tall, and he wore the green khakis with the white hat with the snap. You saw the snap, and he carried his 38 in his pocket. And he was drunk because drinking it's real. Everybody got something. Anyway, Pork Chop was wounded very badly in World War II. He was 100% disabled. He had a metal plate in his head from having his part of his skull blown off during combat. And so he's coming across the street. You know how John Wayne walked? John Wayne was drunk on all of his movies. That's why he walked that way. John Wayne was drunk. And Papa walked the very same way. So Papa, and I'm seeing Papa coming. This man is short. And I'm looking at Papa, and he walks up to this man. And he takes his hand and he drops it on his shoulder. And the man turned around and looked deaf right in his face. And Papa said, "I can pay for your car, or I can pay for your ass." but you're not cuss my daughter not one more time. And uh, and Uncle Jordan was Indian and black, and he was over 6 foot tall, prettiest man I ever seen. He was just the most beautiful brown, and he wore a bolo tie and wide shoulders, mean as a junkyard dog. And we'd go fishing, and he'd get mad because we weren't catching any fish, and he'd reach in his pocket and pull out his gun and shoot in the river. Bam, 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 bam. I'm half black and half Indian, all crazy. And anybody remember Sailor Art Thomas? Remember Wrestling from Roanoke? Anybody remember Wrestling from Roanoke? Wrestling from Roanoke? You don't remember it? Any rate, WWE before it was WWE, there was a black wrestler named Sailor Art Thomas, and he'd stand in the ring and he'd make his chest jump, and he had the Andersons, and the Andersons were always mean. It was a tag team, and the Andersons tag teamed him and jumped off the turnbuckle into his groin, and Sailor Art Thomas is balled up in a knot, and Uncle Jordan sat with a shotgun across his lap. He said, "Them dirty sons of bitches." Boom! He shot the TV set. He shot the TV set. He shot it. It was glorious. You see something crazy and it's in slow motion. It's like, them dirty sons of... Boom! So every time I heard Bubba shot the jukebox on last night and said it, played a sad song and made him cry, I said, Bubba is kin. He is kin. Oh yeah. No, there is some awful tales, but the levity, being able to laugh is a good thing.
Outstanding. Speaking of which, why was Uncle Sonny Boy your favorite uncle?
He was.
Why was Uncle Sonny Boy your favorite uncle?
He was just kind, just kind, just sweet. He'd pick you up and it'd be like riding an elevator. He was tall. He'd pick you up and like you were never going to stop coming up off the ground. And he always had spearmint or peppermint candy in his pocket. He'd say, look at my pocket, baby. And he'd have all my, and he'd give you the sweetest kisses. He was just kind. He was just anybody that knew him, anybody, both black and white, that knew James Alfred Finney knew that this was just a kind, loving man. And he was hardworking. He was just kind.
And was it when he passed, everyone, both black and white?
Yes. Everybody came. Everybody came to his funeral because he was just, everybody knew him. Nobody called him James. He was just Sonny Boy. And my great grandmother, Rosa Waller Finney, she just grieved herself to death. She didn't live much longer. She would just sit on the porch and the water would run down her face because that was her Sonny Boy and he had passed away. He had a massive heart attack in the middle of the night. He got up to cut the light on for his daughter to go to the bathroom because they had bought a house on Carver. And when they finally made the GI Bill acceptable for black folks to get, in 1944, the GI Bill, but we couldn't get the GI Bill until the 64, 65 Civil Rights Act. So when they finally he was able to get the GI Bill to buy that little house on Carver that had a bathroom, and Gene was afraid of the dark. He got up, because he worked 2 jobs, he got up to cut on the light and had a massive heart attack and dropped dead at 33 or 30-something, yeah.
This book examines the effects of trauma on the family. At times, I found some of the retelling of it very hard to navigate through. From identifying what the root meaning of Field Day meant to the tragedy surrounding your sister's death, which incidentally was through a train. What do you hope your readers will take away from reading about these harrowing experiences?
When something horrible happens in your family, it can cause a schism. And oftentimes it's such a schism that people don't get over it. And so they just internalize it. My brother, David, made everybody run to beat the train. David was never the same afterwards because he knew that if he had just said, no, we're going to wait till the train passes. Loretta and would have come home, but it was him not wanting to wait. That and it broke him. It my brother died last July, David, and even he was a good daddy, but he stayed inebriated, and he was always a sadness that he could never get past. So family trauma is the thing that can tear you up, and that tale needed to be told because of two things: understanding what family trauma looks like, and then understanding that how you need to navigate it. Because when you don't see it and you only see it your own trauma, but you don't see that somewhere else, and you don't see what that effect has, if nothing else, some of my nieces and nephews or some of the readers will be able to see this and go, okay, I recognize why my cousin is acting the way that they do. This happened 20 years ago. This happened 30 years ago. Look like they'd get over it. You don't get over it. You live with it. And sometimes you live with the scars. And sometimes those scars are in alcohol abuse or in substance abuse or self-abuse. Sometimes those scars are, I can't go to the church house. I'm so guilty that God can't forgive me. I can't even go in the church house. I can't go sit down because I cannot forgive myself for doing something. And you're still just a kid. You're just a kid. You made a mistake, but you were a kid. And you got to get over it. And a lot of times, people don't. And when you don't, then you carry it. And my brother literally drank himself into an early grave. David was 70, 74, and he left here. Praise God, he married a wonderful woman, and he's got 3 kids who are, well adjusted, but David carried that sadness with him to the grave.
Why do you believe that after paying the $356 and walking out of the police station, that Porkchop never said a word to you about the accident?
Porkchop didn't have nothing in his life. He had nothing in his life that he was proud of. Nothing. He married late, didn't have any kids. I was the only one thing that he was proud of. And Porkchop looked at me the same way Grandma Dolly looked at me. The apple of my eye. Now, of course, it meant I couldn't date. Nobody could come to see me. I learned that do not go home. Nobody is coming to your house. So I did not go home. I went home after my freshman year. I didn't go home anymore because Porkchop everybody knew how mean he was, and you don't go up there talking to Porkchop's girl. I think there's a Porkchop. He had to have a little piece of little drink early in the morning. So I didn't have a driver's license, and the road going to Anderson's bootleg joint was up a hill that had gullies in it. And so I'm straddling the gullies in a Dodge Dart. I'm straddling gullies, and the trees are over top of it was. And you would get up there, and there are all these drunks in front of the shack. And Porkchop said, don't you get out the car. And I'm saying to myself, why would I get out? I don't even want to be up here. Let's get out the car. So he staggers on, goes on in. And this fellow says, who's that? You got in the car. Porkchop said, that's my daughter. And don't you go out there talking to her. She's a college gal. And he goes in the bootleg joint. And as soon as he darkens the door, this fool comes staggering out towards the car. Once again, slow motion when crazy stuff happens. Porkchop comes through the door, reaches in his pocket and pulls out his gun. Boom! He shot at the man's feet. The man is almost at the car. The gravel come in the window. I dive across the seat. The gravel comes in. He turns around. Nigga, you crazy. Porkchop said, and you's dead. Take one more step. So my book does not have any lewd, lascivious comments, but it does have the vernacular of my area. I have, and I talked with Christopher, and Christopher agreed. I truly believe that you can write a book and tell a story without going down lewd, lascivious avenue. To me, it says, it speaks lowly of your education. It speaks lowly of you. We have gotten now that you can't turn on a television show without going to lewd and lascivious avenue. Excuse me, people got brains. People can think. You don't need that. You need to tell a story. My stories are told in a way that you can accept them. And I don't think a second, third, fourth, fifth grader should read it. But I think that once you've reached puberty and you understand people and things, then you can read this book, and mom and daddy is not gonna get all bent out of shape, because there's nothing in there that will lead you down primrose path. It's just, this is the reality of living.
So my last question would have been one that I could have asked before, but I think it's fitting for now. How are you feeling today?
I'm a happy camper. I'm a happy old woman. That's what I am. I am a happy old woman. Do not let the world dictate to you your happiness, because then you'll be miserable. The world is a miserable place. You got to have a true north, and my book is not preaching, but George Washington Finney was a Methodist minister, and he put enough Jesus in me that I know that I got a God that sits high and looks low, and I'm not going to let nothing in this mean old world turn me to a mean old nasty person. It's not happening. It's not happening. I don't care how mean and nasty you are. I'm going to say, God bless you, and I'm going to go ahead smurfing on along. I love the Smurfs, and I'm going to smurf on with my life. And I'm telling everybody, especially young people, don't embrace the mean. Don't embrace the nasty. You don't need to. You don't need to. God will bless you where you are. Everything you want, you can have. Live something. Put some work and effort in it, and you can get anything you want. I come out of Koehler Hollow, go into the bathroom, go into the outhouse, go into the spring, go into the wood pile. When I went to Virginia Union, I had one new pair of pants. They were my brother's. They were red. I stole them. Boy, didn't need no red pants. So I stole them. Had no business buying them red pants. They was mine. I had one new pair of shoes from from the bargain center. That's Maxway's or Family Dollar today. I had one new pair of shoes from Maxway's or Family Dollar. One new dress from Maxway or Family Dollar, and everything else came out of the Goodwill store. And I made it. Look at me now. I am a happy old lady. I worked my way through college. I rode a bicycle up to Giant Open Air. I rode a bicycle. I got out of class at 3:45. I clocked in at 4 o'clock, and I rode back in Richmond streets, back to Virginia Union on a bicycle. I made sanitary napkins out of toilet paper because I didn't have money to buy a sanitary napkin. Wrap around your hand and get a pen and keep it moving. That's how poor I was. But George Finney, Amy Finney, Dolly Finney, you got to have some gumption in this life. Everything is not going to be easy. If you want something, get up, get to it. That's it.
That's all I have. And on that one, I'd like to open it up if we have anyone else who has any questions. But I want to see if we can all give Miss Naomi a round of applause. Thank you for your story. As a historian, I am always centered around the story. That's whether it was my students, whether it's, whether they were wee ones or the adults. I always told them that history is really all about the story. And we can learn a lot by telling the story.
I have can you hear me?
Yeah.
I got a question for you. Are there any stories that didn't make it into the book that you like?
Yeah, but maybe it will be a sequel. But one story that I did not tell, and I'm going to tell it very briefly. When welfare came to Henry County, I guess I was about 10, 11 years old. The welfare woman, they wore uniforms, blue uniforms with like little army hats. And the car come up the road, because you can see it coming a long way off. And she came up, and Papa and Mama was sitting on the front porch. And that's where in the house, those 2 rooms, that was a porch. But I put 2 rooms there at any rate. And she came up and she says, I'm from the welfare department, and you people, y'all qualify for public assistance. And Papa said, what is she? Public assistance? Well, when people are poor, we will help feed your family. And Papa looked at him and at her and said, it's a poor man, can't feed his family. Thank you very much. And he turned back and started talking to Mom. She said, but. Papa said, turn back around and talk to Mom. That's rural. That is country. Public assistance is an insult. It was an absolute insult. You did not take it. When you went hunting and you killed 5 rabbits and you only needed 2, you took those other rabbits to somebody in the community. If you went fishing and you caught a mess of fish, you took those fish to Lou or to somebody else. If you had a big old garden, then you take your string beans. My father's people down in Camp Branch, those men plowed acres. And when the harvest time came in, they went to everybody's house with a bushel of string beans, a bushel of tomatoes, a bushel of corn. Public assistance and welfare was, in our region, it was like the epitome of a failure and an insult. But understand what was in place of it was the kindness, the Christian kindness of people in your community that understood that some people were up against it. So it wasn't, you understand what I'm saying? So when you have people who have no community understanding that you are your brother's keeper, that you are supposed to help somebody, all your blessings are not for you. All your blessings are not for you. Your paycheck is not for you. You need to pay the light bill, because the man in the light bill, he's got to pay his. You got to put some gas in the car. The man at the convenience store, he needs, you got everything you have. It's like an ecosystem. Economy is like an ecosystem. Back in the country, when I grew up, you understood that and you helped everybody. And everybody was there to help you. And there was no need. Welfare did not exist in Henry County. It may have existed in the city, but it did not exist in Henry County. And people that did get on it were looked upon not very well. It was like, this is like the worst of people are on public assistance. So it's a difference.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for telling your story. So you've been a businesswoman, you're an author. I'm curious to know what goals you have going forward.
To learn how to play that banjo. I'm getting there. I've got a banjo and I'm trying to play loose. I'm trying to play this song, Julie, at the Juneteenth. I've almost got it, but I haven't. Anybody heard of Rihanna Gibbons? Can she play? I saw her, I fell in love with the banjo, and I got it. And so I'm working on the banjo, and I'm also a Bob Ross artist. I teach Bob Ross painting. And to live as good as I can till God takes me home, to be as kind as I can, to be as loving as I can till God takes me home. That's my goal, to be as loving and kind as I can until the Lord takes me out of here. And I want him to take me out of here and let me drop dead. I ain't got one thing. That's my one goal. Lord, let me drop dead. I can't stand the thought of a nursing home and can't go outside and can't plant no flowers, can't go outside and sit in the sun. I'm just asking, Lord, let me drop dead and just do as good as I can and leave here quietly and quickly. That's my goal. I know that sounds bad, but you asked.
I would just like to make a comment for all of those that are here now. I've known Miss Hodge for 45
Since you
years.
were 16, yes.
Yeah. So, and I would say this: who you see on the stage now is the same person I've known for 45 years. She is kind. She is determined. She is her own woman. She is her own woman since I've known her when she was back in Union with my sister. She mentioned a bicycle. She didn't tell you, but uh, she has formed a scholarship at Virginia Union and would you please share that?
For the poorest kid with the highest GPA, and it's called the Bicycle Scholarship. It's $800 every year. Because the first semester, I could work in the summer and get money for my books. The second semester, I had no money. So I had to go to the library and get the book that was out of print, or the teacher had to give me a book. And so when I got up so that I had a few dollars to rub together, I've given that scholarship is 35 years old, and it's $800, and it's for the poorest kid with the highest GPA in the sciences. So it's not the kid that you love, it's the kid that just barely hanging in there. But yeah, and it's not named on the scholarship, it's a bicycle scholarship. It's named after my bicycle.
And for those of you that are not aware, Virginia Union University is a historically black college that's in downtown
Down
Richmond,
Richmond.
which my father was also alumni, and my sister. So it's a wonderful institution.
Most
Thank you.
folks, when they hear about VUU, they think about the School of Theology. There is an undergraduate campus in it, and it offers liberal arts college, but it's overshadowed by a phenomenal School of Theology. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, was oral history about your family a tradition? When you all got together, did you talk about your family a lot?
My great grandparents and my grandmother did, but my mother did not. And so that meant that my nieces and nephews weren't going to hear some of these stories. And that was the impetus behind knowing that I didn't have any kids, and knowing that all of my nieces and nephews are very well. I mean, I've got one works for McKinsey. That's the biggest marketing firm in the world. And I've got one works for the Pentagon, one works for Northrop Grumman. I mean, my nieces and nephews, because I went back, because I gave allowances, because I bought cars, because I helped out, because I was the bridge that they got to get, so they didn't have nobody to lean on. And the only thing, and it might not go over well, but I told them, you will go to an HBCU. I don't care where you go for your doctorate degree. I don't care where you go for your BS, but you're going to go to Union. You're going to go somewhere. You're going to go to an HBCU, because and you're a first generation kid going to college, and everybody has money and you have none. That makes you the odd person, and it makes you sad. But when you go to an HBCU, everybody broke.
Yep.
Everybody broke.
Yep.
So everybody is packing food in the cafeteria to take home for snacks. See, then you ain't the odd fella out.
Oh, man.
And then and then if you don't know how to do your hair, there's two girls down the hall. If you don't know, if you ain't got no swagger, the boys down the hall, they gonna talk to
They
you.
gonna talk about it.
You understand what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
ma'am. Yes,
And
ma'am.
they have been wildly successful.
I think when I have parents at the University of Virginia come up to me and ask what's the difference, or or will their child really be acclimated here at the university, I always impress upon it, even with my high school students, go to an HBCU. It didn't work with my children.
But see,
my
they're not
kids
first
went.
generation.
I was the first generation.
You were
right?
first
Yeah.
generation.
So
April's kid is at Temple. The other ones over there are taking dance somewhere in Winchester. But these kids have been on cruises and
Yes.
they got allowances and they ain't making Kotex out of toilet paper.
Right.
They're so they it's a whole ball
It's a different
game.
world.
Once you become middle class and you got middle class kids, they they may not be able to relate to people packing their lunch in the
Not at
the
all. I kept
cafeteria.
pushing him. I was like, you're going to go to an HBCU.
You know,
He was like,
but
no.
but it's okay. It's okay. But I truly believe that we lose ourselves when we think that all your blessings are for you. So you get a job at DuPont, you turn your back on your family, and your family doesn't even have running water. But it's okay for you to live on Carver and drive a nice car. And that wasn't acceptable to me. It wasn't how I was brought up. It wasn't Appalachia. You know, it was always instilled in me that I was responsible for helping my family. My mother on her dying bed says, Naomi, you got to help your brothers. This week, I put a roof on the house in Koehler, this very week. This week, my brother lives with me. You know, they aren't college educated. They're not educated. And they're deficient in some ways. But I don't feel that it's a horrible burden for me to keep my word. If you give your word, you keep it. And sometimes your word's going to cost you. If you give your word, know this, it's going to cost you. You're going to say, I'm going to do this. And then you might not know how much it's going to cost you, but it'll cost you. But if you keep your word, then people will say, this person is of character and I can trust this person. And you get blessed because you keep your word. If nobody else in the world knows you kept your word, you know it.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
I guess I had a question about, thank you for sharing, but a theme through your work and even in your storytelling seems to be. Thank you for sharing. A theme through your work and through your storytelling seems to be Black joy. And I would like to know a little bit more about your experience of realizing that there's a need for that, to add life to those stories outside of just suffering, essentially.
I think it's a toxic tale being, a toxic narrative being pushed upon Black folks. Whoa, 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 whoa. How freaking miserable can you get? I mean, really? Look at yourself in the mirror. You're gorgeous. What is this whoa mess? You have to make your own self happy. Your joy comes from you. You can't let somebody tell you, oh, well, you're just like Ed Miller. Oh, you went to a high school. That's not a college. They almost got in my head until I realized how stupid they were taking the sample right there. And that was the last time that anybody got in my head to make me think less of myself. So you first have to give people the key to your head. I say you keep the key in your head. And you be who your grandma says you are. You know how much your granny doted on you. You know how much she thought you were the most beautiful kid in the whole wide world. If it weren't your aunt, it weren't your granny, your mother, or your aunt, somebody in your family always told you how great you were, how wonderful you were. Believe them. Don't believe the world. The world will always tell you that you're deficient. And it doesn't actually matter what race you are. The world will always tell you there's something wrong with you, because most people do not have a true north. Most people have no joy in their life, but joy is internal. You see, happiness is fleeting. Happiness is fleeting. This can make me happy, but it's fleeting. Happiness can go. Things can change, mood can change. But joy comes from the inside, knowing that you're a child of God, that you are loved, that everything you need, you already got. And all you got to do is just keep pushing forward. And then laugh. We stop laughing. We're going to laugh at old stupid stuff and don't laugh at the fact that I'm named after Robert E. Lee. I'm president of the NAACP, named after Robert E. Lee. If that ain't going to make you laugh, nothing should. Come on. That is funny. Is that not funny? Why? Because my mother they came up with Doretha, but they didn't have a middle name. So Miss Goins, the lady that's great-granddaughter of Robert E. Lee, said, name her after my granddaddy, Robert E. So I'm named after the mother, who's named after Robert E. Lee. And so now you got the president of the NAACP, Martinsville, Henry County, named after Robert E. Lee. If you can't laugh about that, then you need to be, you don't have a funny bone. Life is not that hard. And if you don't laugh at some of the things that's happening, then the toxicity of the world will find its place in your heart. So you can either choose to be happy or you can choose to be miserable. I choose to be happy. I choose to be happy anyway. So it's your personal choice. And I'm so glad that you saw that, because I'm pushing that. I want people to understand gumption and be happy. I lived up in that hollow till I met my husband, raising goats and pigs, and I was as happy as I could be. And you know who introduced to my husband? The teacher that's told me that I would go to college. He introduced me, and he's 23 years older. And he walks up to me and he says, Naomi, this is the perfect man for you. And he absolutely was. I married Prince Charming. He passed away in 2007, and I don't date, because if you ever kiss a prince, you will not kiss frogs.
Mm.
Anything else?
Anyone else? Well, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you. There are some books over in there. Please help yourself. And I'm going to steal this young lady so I can take some pictures. So, thank you.
Thank you.